This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. And all right, perfect. We can. Oh, there we go. Why don't we hit the next slide? Why don't I hit record, and then we'll turn over to Lonnie for the public comments and all that, and then when we get into the heart of it, I can take back over Lonnie if that's okay.
Please.
Great. So we're all square.
All right. Do you want to hit? Is it recording now, Bri?
It is recording. Yep.
All right. So Lonnie, we'll have you call the meeting to order.
Okay. I shall call the meeting to order on Tuesday, October 12th at 8:31 a.m.
Perfect. And then we can.
Okay, and the first item on the agenda are the public comments. Do we have any members of the public who want to speak? Hearing none. Let's move to agenda item number 3. So
We kept it easy for an early Tuesday morning.
So we need to approve the meeting minutes for June 14th, 2021. Do we hear a motion to approve?
This is Matt, so moved.
Thank you, Matt. Do I hear a second?
This is Tom, I'll second it.
Thank you, Tom. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? All right. Let's move on to agenda item number 4.
All right, perfect. And we can go to the next slide. This is the governance review, and I could kind of give a little bit of background here.
Good.
So on an annual basis, part of our kind of like best practices, we always review the governance document. And if we could flip to the next slide, that'd be great, Brian. And what we typically do is I'll do a first run, and then I'll usually touch base with Brian after the process. Is I'll go through, our resolution of purpose, our bylaws, operating procedures, ethics statement, ethic conduct policy, and then often we'll have like little minor revisions. This year, the revisions were a little bit more than we typically do on an annual basis because of our expanded scope to finance remote environmental infrastructure. So all the changes that we made in the governance documents related primarily to that expansion in our work scope. There were a couple cleanups and then one item, which was a statutory change from last legislative session, which said that we could finance up to 100% of energy efficiency projects and 80% of renewable projects. That was something that went back to the original passage of the Clean Energy Finance and Investment Authority. That was changed in statute last year, so we also took that out of our bylaws. So that one should be non-controversial. So with those cleanups that we made, we're asking for the Audit, Compliance, and Governance Committee to make a recommendation to the board to approve. We would bring this to the board for their approval. And then what we would also do is that our operating procedures, because of statute, require that that there's a public notice and comment period. So then we would publish those operating procedures to see if we got any feedback. We typically don't. And then assuming that there wasn't any material or feedback that we want to bring back to the board, then they would be deemed approved. So with that, I would ask if there's any questions. And if there's not any questions, I would ask for a recommendation for approval to the board.
This is Tom, I do have a question.
Sure.
You had gone to great lengths just a few seconds ago to say that this should be non-controversial to that one item. Is there anything in here that you believe would be controversial?
No, because it really is just trying to align our expansion in the work scope and including that building that into these documents, because we make references throughout these documents to our mission to deploy clean energy. So it made sense to say, you know, to our mission to deploy clean energy and to finance and promote environmental infrastructure. I mean, that's really the heart of the changes.
Okay.
Brian, it's Matt. So notice will get published in what, like the Law Tribune? And
Correct.
then how long is the comment period? And then does it come back to us? Do we get to see any public comments, or does it go right to the full board?
So it would go right to the full board. They would approve pending any comments being received. So typically we felt pretty confident that we haven't gotten any like real comments. So if we don't get any substantive comments, then they're deemed approved. If substantive comments do come in, then we would bring it back to the board. If there's anything that's kind of in the questionable, like is that a material comment, we'd bring it back. But
as like an optics question though, why would we do that? Why don't we just wait for the public comment period and then adopt it? It just seems, optically to be lessening the importance of public comment if the board acts on it before they even get them.
we could do that. I think the concern from a staff perspective is that we didn't want to make a presumption that to put something like that externally to the public without the board seeing it first. So then the question was, okay, if you want to bring it to the board first, are we going to bring it to the board, then notice, and then have an approval? I think we were just trying to basically streamline the process.
Hey, Brian, how about we put it to the board? Are we okay with taking this to the public, and then barring public comment, we bring it back to the board for final approval? I know it sounds a little bit clunky, but I actually agree with Matt.
Okay.
And it also takes a bit of the subjectivity away from, the staff. Not that I don't trust you,
Yeah.
but to see whether something or not is material or not.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I'm good with that, and not just because you're my bosses, but I'm good with that too, because I think when we started originally this process, we weren't even really utilizing the consent agenda as much. So this would be something that would be a good example to put on the consent agenda if there's no comments, but also gives the opportunity to say, hey, hold on a second.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that.
I make
Okay, sorry.
Any more questions or comments? So do I hear go ahead.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, I'll make a motion that we accept these and that we adopt the process as we just outlined to go on the consent agenda, get public comment, and then come back for a final vote of the board.
Okay, do I hear a second on that recommendation? Hello?
Leaving me.
Huh?
Leaving me hanging.
We may have,
Yeah.
Garage right now.
Matt, Tom, come on.
we may
There
have
was a
lost.
whole brotherhood
I
thing
made
going
a
on.
recommendation. I can't second it. I'm left hanging here.
We lost him. He's in the garage.
Oh, he's in the garage?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Maybe we can table this item and then move forward with the next item, and then hopefully Matt's back by then.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, please don't ask me to repeat what I said. I could never do it again.
No problem. I got it.
Beautifully articulated, Tom.
Yes,
Yeah.
very, very nice.
That's a one and done. I'm done for the day.
Oh, it's not even 9 a.m. yet. Good.
Yeah, that's my stop the clock moment.
On the reporting requirements, this has been pretty straightforward. All items that we have a statutory reporting, duty to respond, whether it's the legislature or the OPM or controller's office, all items are up to date. This was a checklist that we send out with every ACG mailing. The reason why this came about was that in the past, there were issues with getting items in on time. So we installed this in response to a past audit finding, and I can report that it's been going well and all items are up to date. The next item is agenda item number 5, the update to the handbook and IT vendor management policy and data privacy policy. I'm actually going to turn that over to Eric Frago. He can give a report out on what's going on there.
So we are bringing to you guys an update of our handbook. Per the memo, you'll see that the updates are really straightforward. I think they're less controversial than any of the governance document changes. This is just really bringing in line our handbook with, it's just basically modernizing it and updating it. So we've updated it for COVID. We have updated it for the safety procedures for the new office. We've updated it from a technology perspective to be in line with the systems that we're using. The two big updates that I want to highlight to you is we've refreshed our data privacy language in here. Again, that's just in line with the controls that we have in place. And then from a vendor management perspective, we at one time adopted this fairly onerous IT vendor management policy that we have, we're folding in here because this is where we have the rest of our policies live. We're updating that policy to be more in line with what industry is doing in terms of really looking for software developers SOC 2 certification. This is a certification that seeks to make sure that the developer, the provider, the organization has the best controls around security, that they're safeguarding personal information, that there's backups, so on and so forth. This is actually something that we've pursued and achieved for the Green Bank for the past several years. So it just basically means that we're looking for any of our software partners to have the same level of audits and controls that we do. And
can I ask a question on that front? Have we done a cybersecurity audit? Have we looked at what our risk is there?
We do it every year.
Results of that audit are?
We're in very good shape. I hate saying it because I don't want to jinx myself, but we found items that we needed to remediate, but they were all deemed medium risk at best, and we're working through that list. We get a list every year, and it's just new things that come up. We tighten our controls, and we work with AdNet, who is our the IT vendor, and they just recently spun off a separate entity that we're working with to do all of our cybersecurity and control reviews.
Do we deem ourselves at a high risk for a cybersecurity attack or anything of that nature?
I mean, I don't think that it depends on how you want to define that risk. I don't think that we're at any elevated risk of anyone else. I mean, I think that the fact that we have bank in our name makes us an attractive target to those that don't know anything more about us. But look, we have as onerous of the cybersecurity regime as we possibly can for an organization our size in terms of protecting data. We have fairly rigorous backups in terms of maintaining everything in the cloud and making sure that those are backed up multiple times a day. So in terms of user access, that's fairly limited in terms of somebody gaining access to our system. So I think that while there are risks out there, I think that we've met them very well.
So, yeah, see, the reason for my question is I have many clients, and actually it's been really bad during COVID because so many computer people are at home, programmers and the like, hackers. But I've had several clients this year get hit with cybersecurity attacks or with cyber attacks and hacks. And what we've started to do with our clients is recommend that they go to an outside third party that do a hacking exercise, that
Okay.
actually they pay somebody to hack us. Do we do that?
We do that.
Okay, so we have the results of that.
We
And
have
I
the
guess
results. We have the
ethical
results of
hack
that.
or something like that.
Yeah, we have the results of that, and that to achieve our SOC 2 certification, that's something that we do as part of that. Or
Okay.
I have even more trust in that because we have two separate entities that do it. One is the ethical hacker, and then the other is the auditor who looks at the results and looks at kind of how they went about it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I appreciate that. I'm glad to know that's done. Thank you so much.
And I will caveat this by saying nothing is 100%, but I believe in what we've done to a high degree.
No, this stuff moves so quickly that you're absolutely right, and I'm not taking anything that you're saying is saying we're, 100% secure that we won't have an issue. But I just wanted to know that we're doing all due diligence in order to stop it. So I appreciate your efforts.
Thanks.
Now, when we talk about these handbook updates, these are the overall handbook, not just IT, correct?
Correct. So there are things. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
No,
please.
I was going to say there are things in there like here's where you meet after the fire alarm goes off to make sure that everybody is accounted for. It's that type of update that we have in here.
Right. One of the things I was thinking of, and this might not be, Brian Garcia, I'll leave it to you, right? But I think I've been pretty clear for a number of years that an area of concern for me is our HR policies, our compensation policies, from the standpoint that I want to make sure that we don't, and I know this is a sticky wicket, right? We are a governmental agency, but we're quasi-governmental. And I always get concerned of not getting the best talent or not maintaining the best talent because of the opportunities that are available in the private sector. And I just feel that the Green Bank can provide such a service here, as well as return on our money for the way we're set up for the taxpayer and for more investment in green energy, that I really think it's important that we constantly review our human resources and compensation policies as compared to not just other governmental agencies, but also to the private sector to see what we need to do to maintain the quality of the operations that we have. So that's a long soliloquy, but I just want to make sure that we're keeping that in mind as we look at our handbook. And again, others might have a different opinion, but I really think we are getting to the area where we're competing a little bit appropriately with the private sector as opposed to just other governmental agencies.
Yeah, Tom, I just want to add, thank you for that comment. Obviously the attraction and retention of the best talent is in fact what drives the impact of the organization. We are mission, but that's very important. I try to every other year update the succession plan. So at the senior level, just trying to understand where my senior team is. We're all very candid with each other, where they want to head, just to try to understand, to make sure we're kind of fulfilling all of their career objectives. We're now going through an exercise where we're driving that back down through the organization to try to look at the rising stars who are going to need some professional development to be able to step into some of those gaps if they do open up in the future. So we're doing some of those 9-box kind of McKinsey work and taking a look at what we can do to support our staff growth. So all of that's key. And then Eric, you can definitely speak to it, but we are doing, and we have this as part of our succession plan every, I think, 3 to 4 years to update the compensation assessment. So the last time we did this was in, I think it was October of 2017. So we're now, we brought in a contractor to take a look at where we are to the market. And we want to make sure, again, that we're comparable, competitive, so that we ensure that we're attracting and retaining the best talent. But Eric, I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
Yeah, just as an update on that, I know I mentioned this last time, we selected a consultant out of an RFP. We've decided to go with Cardis Larson, who is our consultant for the previous study. and we are due to kick that engagement this week. So
Yeah, a couple things on that. What is, and forgive me, Madam Chairwoman, if this is off topic for this, but if not, if they can answer, what is kind of the process after you do that? Does that, you get the results of that? Who does that go to? How does that, where does it go from there?
So we'll get basically what Cardis is going to do is they're going to benchmark the positions versus some publicly available and some privately available information, and put together what's in line. They're going to look at our bands or salary bands for our various grades, take a look at the structures, make sure that nobody is too far out of line, that we don't have any structural issues around pay inequity. And then ultimately they'll produce a report that will go to the Budget and Operations Committee, Budget Operations and Compensation Committee, I should say, and they will review that and ideally accept any recommendations that Cardis will make around changes to that. So if we need to be increasing our grades, they'll be the ones that will be, or they'll make that recommendation, and BONC will make that recommendation to the board.
Yeah, can you just, I seem to recall a similar exercise quite some time ago. Maybe, Brian, as you said, it was 2017. I don't recall. But can we make sure that when they look at comps that they are looking at not just other public entities, but they're also looking at the kind of the private sector and where we may be losing people to? As I recall previously, at some point we compare ourselves more to other governmental agencies, which is fine, and I get it, but I also think we need to look at where our competition for talent is, which when it comes to banks and stuff is obviously a broader pool. That's all I'll say.
Absolutely. Even before this conversation, I intended to bring that up, but I'll make sure that I underscore that with them.
Thank you so much, and thank you for indulging me.
No, thank you, and I'd love to pick your brain and follow up with you as we continue down this engagement with Cardis.
Sure.
All right, and I believe we have a resolution on this, but we can table that until Matt's out of the garage.
Looks like Matt's out of the garage. They let him out of the garage.
I'm here.
Hey, Matt, can I have a second for my last motion on the other item? You left me hanging.
Sorry, I wasn't here for that. I'll second.
Excellent.
It's a matter of blind faith because I didn't hear the motion.
Well, it was to accept the provisions and provisos that were articulated by you and Tom. So
yes,
so basically, if there's any revisions or anything that comes from public comment, it's going to come back. So it's going to be like non-discretionary, and then we're going to throw it on the and then we're going to throw it on the consent agenda regardless for a follow-up meeting to the board after they approve it after the public comment period.
Brian, it's going to come back even if there are no public comments, right? Just on the consent agenda.
Correct. Exactly.
So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? All right.
And
what is that? Agenda item 4 approved.
okay. And since we're here, is there a motion with regards to the resolution to recommend the approval of the updates to the handbook?
I don't know if anybody else has any comments on that. I'm ready to move forward, but I hesitate to do that pending whether Lonnie or Matt have anything.
No, I'm ready to move forward.
Yeah, I don't have any additional comments. I do agree, Tom, with a lot of what you said, except I also, I think this is not excluded from what you said, but we also do need to keep an eye on our sister agencies because, like it or not, that's the measuring stick. We have to answer to two masters, the public and talent. So, but yes, I'm ready to move forward. So if you'd like, I'll make a motion to accept that
Great.
resolution.
And a second? May I have a second?
Yes, I'll second it.
Excellent. Well done. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? All right. It's approved. Moving on.
All right, if you can pull up the other slides, that's perfect. Oh, you're always ahead of me.
Well, I would like to introduce our auditors this year. We have Ron Nosek and Jessica Aniska from Clifton Larson Allen, and they did an audit and pulled together financial statements with our help, which you have in front of you. The front half being the financial section, which has been audited, and the last half is the non-financial section, which is very programmatic, same as what we've had in prior years, and only information that would tie to the financial statements in the front part within that section has been ticked and tied. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ron Nosek, and he will run through a presentation and ask for any questions at the end. Thank you.
Can everyone hear me? Okay, good. I wasn't quite sure, so I apologize. I guess just a point of clarification, because of the slide before this or the screen before this, I'm assuming everyone knows, but CLA acquired Bloom Shapiro. It was effective January 1 of 2021, hence the name change relative to the firm. But Jess and I have been working with all of you and Green Bank for this. Will wrap up our 6th year actually performing audit and a test work on behalf of you, those charged with governance. So the team was the same, the office was the same, the name was not. So I'll go through a quick presentation. I looked at the agenda. I think I had 30 minutes allocated. Unless Q&A goes a long time, I think I'll give you back a good 15 of those, if not more. But if you want to jump ahead here on the slide deck, what we'll go over is audit scope, reporting results, which quite frankly are the most important facet of what I'm here talking to you today. A few financial highlights. These are really high level, 40,000 foot view things as to what transpired, consolidated into some real general explanation. And then finally, just the required communications from us, your auditors, to you, those charged with governance. So from the perspective of audit scope, if we want to jump the slide. So we're performing the engagement, and I've said this, I think, probably every year I've been in front of you, but we're performing this under 2 sets of standards, really. We're performing it under generally accepted auditing standards as well as generally accepted governmental auditing standards. Generally accepted auditing standards, GAS, is really what dictates the audit procedures performed on the financial statements themselves. And the primary audit opinion that begins on page 1 of the document is all under generally accepted auditing standards relative to the financial statements. Generally accepted governmental auditing standards comes into play in that under those standards, we're required to gain an understanding of the internal control structure relative to financial reporting and report to you any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses that we may find under internal control, as well as we need to gain an understanding of any compliance requirements relative to the bank. And if there were a violation of one of those compliance requirements that we deem to be material to the financial statements, we're required to report those to you. So next slide is really the encapsulation of the results. So under generally accepted auditing standards, we've issued an unmodified or clean audit opinion on the financial statements as of and for the year ended June 30, 2021. The opinion states that in our professional opinion, the financial position results of operations fairly represented in the financial statements. Under governmental auditing standards, there were no internal control findings that were noted during the performance of our work. Just reflecting back on some conversation that was taking place earlier in the meeting, we also do a far less granular evaluation of IT But our focus is how it relates to financial reporting, and for the most part, it focuses on on access controls and things of that nature. But we also are kind of sticking our nose in there by requirement. But again, no internal control findings were noted. And then relative to compliance, there were no instances of non-compliance or other matters that were required to be reported to you under governmental auditing standards. So that would wrap up the reporting results from the perspective of financial highlights. And I'm rather certain you're all aware of these as it is. What I have here is just on the left, just some summary information as to what transpired. And then some snapshots right out of the financial statements relative to the sections of the financial statements that we're talking about. Total net position of the bank increased year over year by $12.4 million. Your operating revenues increased $12.6 million, and this was really due to green gas and rec sales. So all the auction proceeds and rec sales that transpired during the fiscal year generated a bump in revenue, if you will, operating revenue year over year. If we jump to slide, the statement to the right is still the same statement they were just looking at, just dropping down now to operating expenses. They decreased almost $10.5 million year over year. The primary driver in that is in fiscal 20. There was a relatively material increase in the loan allowance due to COVID at that point in time. So the pandemic was relatively new to us all at that point in time, and the bank wasn't really sure of the impact. There was I don't even, Jess, you can remind me if I'm wrong. I don't know that there was any adjustment to the reserve in fiscal 21. If there was, it was pretty minor in nature. So that's really what drove the decrease in operating expenses year over year. The next bullet doesn't make any sense. I apologize for that. We didn't do a good job proofreading this slide deck, but basically it's getting into the cost of goods sold for energy systems that it decreased as well year over year, and was in line with the sales related to those systems. So it actually drove down both the sales and the cost of goods. So the impact was relatively negligible. The next slide, again, final slide relative to the operating statement, but this is just a snapshot of your non-operating revenues and expenses. And these increased slightly year over year by about $4.8 million, or I should say to a $4.8 million net expense. You can see the categories that generate that $4.8 million net expense for the fiscal year. But as you look over in the variance column there to the right, the total variance was $193,000, which is quite immaterial to the bank relative to the financial statements. So we can jump one more slide we have in here, or a couple more slides. This is basically off of the statement of net position, or the balance sheet, if you will, and it's really the equity section. So just looking at what the net position of the bank was as of the end of the fiscal year. So your unrestricted net position increased $4.6 million as of the end of the year compared to the prior year. I'm sorry, it increased to 4.6. It was a $7.4 million increase year over year. Contributing to the increase was $3.2 million increase relative to STREC activities, and then also net position due to lower bond obligations of $2.2 million. And then there's a lot going on in there, but $1 million increase in unrestricted cash from residual funds received after quarterly bond payments were certified. So there's quite a few things that impacted that unrestricted. The good thing is in fiscal 20, we were in a deficit position, and the bank climbed out of that deficit position quite significantly. So hopefully trajectory in 2022 is going to continue that trend. Next slide. Again, just looking at the facets of net position, the non-expendable portion of net position decreased $62 million or $6.2 million during the year. And the net position restricted for energy, I'm having a little difficulty reading my own slides, so I truly apologize for that. The net position, restricted net position increased 16 to $16.9 million year over year. And that was an increase of 6.3, and there's some information relative to what generated that increase down below there. And then jumping to required communications, I won't go through these bullet by bullet, but basically what they're trying to do or designed to do is to report to you any instances that we encounter that would indicate that management is expressing some bias to the financial statements. So in general, making the financial statements or trying to make the financial statements look better or conceivably worse than they actually are as of the measurement date, which is June 30, 2021. For the most part, these can be primarily embedded in your estimates, so that allowance to loan losses that we talked about earlier, your estimated fixed assets and depreciation. Here with the bank, a significant estimate that we look at is the asset retirement obligations. So all of these, again, are estimates, so they're subjective in nature, and management has the ability to manipulate those if need be. We evaluate those, especially the significant estimates, quite extensively, and we were comfortable with where they all ended at year end. And some of the other areas that are listed in there, the bullets, uncorrected and corrected misstatements, those generally, again, would present bias if we had uncorrected misstatements that were going to perhaps make the financial statements in that position in a worse position than management wanted it. And so management was passing on posting those adjustments. Again, these are all things we would be required to report to you, and you would evaluate those either with our help or without our help relative to the whys and what is behind management's decisions relative to that. So that'll wrap up what I was going to go through with you. It also wraps up, I think, our overall contract, if you will. We're only allowed to stay for 6 years. We'll be around if you need us. We'll certainly help in every manner possible with the transition to whomever is fortunate enough to be awarded the audit contract for fiscal 22. But it's been a pleasure servicing all of you over the past 6 years, in particular management and the group that we've worked with relative to the financial statements. So I'll turn it back to you, Madam Chair, and take any questions that you may have at this point.
Thank you. So the bottom line is we look good.
Yeah, I think that we're not, as auditors, we're not allowed to say that, to be quite honest with you. But
I mean, that's what it sounds like. And I just
yeah. The financial position. The financial position is
with things like the Port Authority and all that kind of stuff. I like to know that our auditing is. These are really strong numbers. So thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions? Tom?
Yes,
Matt?
I do. If others don't, I can wait.
Go, Tom.
Great, thank you. First of all, congratulations to the internal team. Getting through an audit without commentary and without significant adjustments is a good accomplishment. So I first of all want to give my congratulations to them. I want to thank you to the auditors for the work you did on the audit as well. With the niceties out of the way, a couple of questions. Number one, you talked about the use of estimates in the financial statements, and I'm glad you found that they were reasonable. My question would be, has there been any change in methodology in any of those estimates from previous years?
There has not, no.
Okay, so we're consistent year over year in what we're doing on the accounting methodology and treatments.
Yeah, I mean the only material change, if you will, was what we discussed relative to what happened in fiscal 20, and it was based on an anticipated decline in payments received by the bank for notes that are outstanding, but it really wasn't necessarily a change in methodology. It really was a change in circumstance that drove that adjustment for fiscal 20.
Right. So let's dive into that a little bit. We're now in October of 2021. How do we look as compared, and this might not be for the auditors, I understand, but how do we look as compared to what I'm getting is we were pretty conservative in our review for doubtful accounts, for lack of a better way to put it. Where do we come out now? We're 9 months, 10 months out. Did we collect more than we thought we were going to collect? And what will that do to the financial statements moving forward in that estimate?
I can take that if you'd like. When we evaluated the loan loss reserves at year end, we still felt that we didn't really know enough about what was still going to be happening with COVID. So we kept the estimates we put in. But what we did experience, we did not see that we had any additional write-offs. Some of the things that we did experience were the deferrals of the payments for some of the CPACE to go along with the towns. But when those deferrals ended, everything picked up and we did receive the payments that we were supposed to receive. We did a couple of things when we acquired some of the Tranche 1 Clean Fund properties during the year. We, of course, did have to put up reserves for those. And before we put them on our books, we evaluated where they stood to make sure that the payment schedules were something that could be achieved by the borrowers. And we did have a meeting on one of those borrowers with the board just before year end. So you should be familiar with that as well. So go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just agreeing with you. We're familiar, yes.
So what we do have in the books may end up to be conservative, but knowing what's been going on with the Delta variant and with offices opening and closing, we didn't feel it was a good idea to pull that down at this point. But our experience has been that we are not seeing any significant losses that are COVID related, and we only did experience the delay in cash, which has now come around and come on the books. We had a very strong collection period for the July collection period that we just went through.
So what I'm hearing from that is that we might have for lack of a better word, or a technical term, a pickup in 2021 relative to being over accrued in the reserve, and I would say appropriately, over accrued as of the end of 2020. Is that a fair comment?
Yes, it could be, but given the amount of investment that we plan to make during 2022, I would say that any release in those reserves would be offset by what we would expect to pick up as Mr. Hunter puts our cash to work.
Yeah. A question, will we therefore change our reserve methodology relative to 2021 when we close the year on that?
We will review what we have on the books just with respect to what we did for the COVID additional reserves, but the methodology for the remainder will be the same. It'll also be reviewed by a new firm, so there may be some commentary coming out there as well. Right.
And that gets to my next question just very briefly. What is the process now for looking at the new firm?
We will go out with an RFP, and once we settle with this audit and get it behind us, I will release that and it will be posted, and we'll have a period where we expect to get responses for that, and then the senior team will evaluate and we'll make a selection based on that. So I would suspect we did it kind of the last time we went through it. I think we were doing it in or probably April, when we really need to be doing work in May. So I hope to get it done in the December, January timeframe this year instead. We've had a lot of interest from firms contacting us, and so we do anticipate that we'll have a number of strong responses.
Yeah, question on that. When you say senior management, my apologies, I just want to make sure I have it right. Senior management will make a recommendation and the board will appoint the auditors. That's correct?
I believe that's the way it's been. I haven't been through that particular process since it's been 6 years, but we did do an RFP for these last 2 years, of which we did not change auditors. So yes, I believe that will be the process.
Okay, great. To our auditors, and again, thanks for all your work. As you exit stage right here, and I know, and it's great that we don't have any reportable conditions or control weaknesses, so thank you for that. My question would be more along the lines of this committee supporting the accounting and finance function, not as a, gotcha or whatever. So please take it in that vein. Was there anything what areas of accounting and finance are we inefficient or could we shore up? Not necessarily as reportable conditions, but just, man, that's a pain in the neck, or man, that takes a lot of time. And Jane, feel free to kind of tell us that as well. This is both kind of an efficiency and effectiveness comment. And, having run these shops myself, I know there's always areas, so please don't take it as like I said, a criticism in any way. This is more of a how do we support the function better?
I can say for me that it's always been about staffing. It always seems that we have more to do than we do for people on around. And I know in the past, before I was hired, that was a comment. And now with George moving on, I find that we're doing a lot more with the investments and things. So I did recently do a hire, Dan Smith, earlier in May. And I hope that that is something that is going to alleviate some of the craziness that I've seen at my level. So for me, it's always been about proper staffing. And I do foresee that we might be having some turnover as things move around. But it will always be something that I try to hire people who are coming in who will have a good glide path to eventually take my job. So definitely staffing has been one of the big issues for me.
Well, is that to our auditors consistent with what you're seeing? In what areas, if I might ask, might you have seen weakness in the accounting function?
Yeah, I wouldn't suggest we find or see weakness. Internal control, segregation of duties is always an issue when you are handcuffed as to the amount of human resources, the amount of resources you have available to you. So there's only so many people you can put in roles that can perform checks and balances that actually have the skill set to perform that check and balance. So I think that's something that should always be under the primary consideration of the committee, if you will accept that. We do, and Jess can probably speak more to this than I can because she's there more on the day-to-day basis. But audits typically, when you go into a government client or a quasi-government client, they tend to be a little chaotic. That's sort of the nature of the process, because even if an organization is staffed appropriately, they're staffed to the day-to-day operations of the organization and not the 2 or 3 week time frame that the auditors come in and basically turn everything upside down with information requests and things of that nature. But that process, from year one, can be somewhat frantic, and we found it to be frantic. I think the whole reasoning behind it is the level of human resources, not the technical ability of those resources, but just how many people, how many bodies the bank can put on it to deal with your external auditors on a annual basis.
How about if Jess is on this call, it'd be interesting to get the take. And then also, how about the systems? Are we supported well on the system side here? Or do we have potential for better system that would alleviate some of this issue as opposed to just throwing bodies at it?
Well, Jess, I'll go first, but relative to that, I mean, there's always the possibility, and quite honestly, I'd be foolish if I said there are no alternative, methods or products out there that perhaps could bring some more efficiency to the organization. One that comes to mind, it maybe isn't that significant, but in years past where you guys were involved in interest rate swaps, George was doing, and I think that still may continue internally, although the swaps themselves have, at least this past cycle, were a little bit immaterial. You're doing the effectiveness calculation internally. That's high level stuff. We do CHFA. I do work for CHFA. I do work for Rhode Island Housing, all quasi banks, if you will. They're in the same type of investment products, and they're utilizing third parties to do those calculations and to do fair value calculations and things of that nature. So, that may be something, the use of third party experts may be something that the bank would want to look to going down the road. And again, I'm not suggesting that the talent isn't there in order to do that internally, but that's a big undertaking.
Yeah, you don't have to caveat it. I'm not, again, this isn't a criticism. Look, the staff just got through an audit with no material adjustments and no weaknesses. I'm just looking to say, what do we need to do as an audit and governance committee to support their efforts on a day-to-day basis, period. So, it's not, I don't take it in any way that we don't have the talent or the staff or they're not trying real hard. I just want to make sure that Jane and the team feel as though we've got their back, and that if there's areas that there's, it hasn't come out in a weakness, but people are working 12, 14 hours a day to make it happen, I'd rather know about that, right? As opposed to sit here and just say, hey, everything's fine, we got a great audit opinion. Well, Jane is, trying to keep her head above water on a day-to-day basis. And I just don't know the answer to that.
Yep, no, that's well put.
Yeah. Brian, as the leader of the organization on a day-to-day basis, what's your view out of, the accounting? And again, not that they're not doing a great job or anything, but are you getting financial statements on a timely basis? Do you see a struggle there? What's happening with that?
So thanks, Tom, for the question. So I think structurally, since Jane came in from a software perspective, you were talking about technology. She's really built out a dashboard that enables staff every day to see where they stand. I've got a number of different dashboards that I look at. So I really feel like between the team she's assembled and the tools she's using, that we have 24/7, 365 access to where we are in terms of our financial positions. And that's just great, because we've got a really ambitious strategy. And I just say, broadly, having heard today's audit and just seeing where we are financially, that, with respect to our sustainability objective, we're coming out of our 10th year, right? So July of 2011, we just hit our 10th year anniversary this past July. We're in a strong, knock on wood, financial position as an organization. I think that's what this message today is. But we're also programmatically in a stage of transition. So, you'll hear as we move into our October meeting that, we're moving out of our residential solar investment program, which was a $1.4 billion market that we helped create. And we're moving into a $1.2 billion battery storage market. So we're going to see some kind of programmatic lulls as we transition from that market to a new market. So, we're going to see that over this fiscal year, but we're in a good, strong financial position to be able to support that transition. So
But Brian, what does that mean? That doesn't address the question relating to your internal accounting and finance operations. It addresses the question from a are we strong financially? Yes, I get it. But is the accounting and finance organization, structurally sound at this point? And again, that's not a criticism, but do we have weakness there that we need to shore up from an efficient effectiveness standpoint?
It's never been better. And to the extent Jane has recommendations, those will be listened to, but it's never been better.
Okay. And Jane, your recommendation right now is you need some staffing perhaps, and you didn't say anything about systems on that or the use of external experts.
Systems are what we have in place right now has really done quite a bit, being able to do a consolidation monthly rather than just once a year, and being able to pull up and see financials live on the dashboards. And we do have, anything that Brian can come up with that he would like to see, we can actually program and have him see on a monthly basis as we run through the close. Right now, I think my staffing is good with the last changes I've made, but I just want to be able to look forward and make sure that as things change within my department, that I've got the ability to bring on the staff that I need to make sure that we can cover what we're doing and look towards. I believe we're going to probably have some significant changes with our scope enhancement, and depending on how quickly those take off, we may need to bring in additional resources. So as long as I will keep you posted with what I need, and if we have to come back to the budget committee for additional staffing, we'll do that.
This is Matt. Tom, if I could just jump? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Tom. You finish.
No, go right ahead, Matt. I've been.
No, well, I was going to say I'm listening, and I think as important as it is to have talent at the Green Bank, it's great to have talent on the board as well, and very reassuring to hear, Tom, that these are great questions and really constructive questions too. And I only wish I thought of most of these questions, but it dawns on me, maybe we as a committee, and before I forget, let me thank CLA/Bloom Shapiro for all their years of service while I was chairing this group. But it's obvious, there's really a lot more of a dive to be done here constructively, and we tend to meet twice a year, which is what the handbook says we're supposed to do, or the bylaws. I wonder, Tom, I'll ask you first. I mean, maybe we should have a meeting where we don't have a full agenda, where we can have this conversation and have, let Jane prepare for it, maybe invite in chair of the budget committee, and really do this kind of dive, because as Brian indicated, we are in a good financial position. Programmatically, we're in a financial good position. And I'm sure from our systems perspective, we are too, but truthfully, I never had the expertise to understand it. But with this expertise on board, it just seems like another area we can continue working to make the Green Bank a model, because we know other people look at us, and the extent to which we can improve our systems, that will eventually help others too, including ourselves. So I would suggest maybe we schedule that kind of meeting and deliberately not populate the agenda with other things.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
I love the idea, and I thank the auditors for your insights and for your years of service. And Jane, just let us know, assuming others are in favor of Matt's idea. Let us know when a good time, not that there's ever a great time, but when a good time to have such a meeting would be. And
Brian, Brian Farnan, we have someone taking the minutes, right? Could we ask? I don't mean to impose, but could we ask them to cull out the line of the various questions, just to give us an outline, and maybe before the meeting we can circulate it. People can add additional questions. Jane can have the benefit of seeing them, and we can really try to focus the discussion before we all convene. And I just think there's such a good set of questions, most of which got answered, but I think it would serve as a good prompt for additional questions.
Sure, we can do that. I think Ariel is our minute taker today, so no pressure, Ariel. All right, and then lastly on the audit, we do have the recommendation to the full board. Are we comfortable moving forward with that?
I am.
Yes. Do you need a motion?
Yes. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move the recommendation.
A second?
I'll second it.
Ah, thank you. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? All right.
All right.
Moving on to item number 7.
Now I know it's late, so we'll go through these really quickly. So we can go to the next slide. So this ad hoc committee, and having someone like Kevin Walsh on our board, and he's just moved on. I'll talk about that in a couple slides. He really is like a national, global leader in clean energy. If you talk to anyone like in the industry, like having someone with his experience, you just can't match. And so we have board members like him and Matt Rinelli, who we're going to lose at some point soon, which we're always trying to keep as long as possible. You want to keep them engaged. You want them involved. Matt Rinelli really has made our organization such a better organization. We would not be where we are today without Matt Rinelli. We would, having the insight to be able to go to Matt or to go to Kevin is so helpful. So we have this idea that let's have an ad hoc committee. It's something that we can do in our bylaws, where basically we'd have the chairperson. Lonnie would talk to Brian. People like a Matt or Kevin are like no-brainers, and say, okay, yeah, we would love to have this person as part of this committee. Then it would get approved by the board, and basically, whether it's a special project or a big project finance deal, we could then go out to that group and get their insight. Or, God forbid something happened in the organization, never want to say we'll have a lottery situation, but having someone like a Matt Rinelli who has institutional knowledge, that has the trust of the board members to look and do an independent review, and have someone like that to step in, do something like that, or look at a potential new type of arrangement, with a Kevin. We would love to have this ad hoc committee opportunity. So we're looking to get a recommendation from the ACG committee for the approval of the board to enable us to establish this ad hoc committee as needed for future items that pop up and arise.
Any questions?
Yeah, I'll just say I think it's a great idea. Other organizations make great use of their alumni. I think we should look to do that on the board side and on the staff side. And so this is one way we can do it on the board side, and it's a great idea, I think.
I agree with everything that's been said except for the flowers thrown at Matt. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm fully supportive of this, as well as the comments on Matt and Kevin and the ability to use them going forward.
Excellent. So we have a motion.
Do I have a motion to approve item number 7, the ad hoc committee creation?
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? All right. It passes.
Excellent. So the board membership term update. So I added this. The times are changing. Because 2021 really was a year of turnover and change at the board level. Kevin Walsh stepping down, Dominic Grant coming in, which we're really excited about, especially with environmental infrastructure experience. Bringing on Laura Hoydick, the mayor of Stratford, who is the former E&T ranking member with Lonnie, a great addition to our board. OPM through a change in statute now being on our board, and Melissa McCall appointing Claire Coleman, who really is known as a leader in clean energy policy in the state, and having that type of person over at OPM who really understand the issues is great. So with that is great opportunity, but at the same time, we're also losing a great board members that we don't really want to see move on. I mean, we talked about Matt, that's going to be tough. And Steve Myers, another one who's coming in, came in this year. or maybe so there's a lot of change. So no real issues to address right now or anything like that with board appointees. We're kind of in a good place right now with full board membership. So nothing to vote on there. We can even go to the next slide if you want.
Yes, please.
And then just happy to say that, yeah, I would take a motion to adjourn.
Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A second.
Matt?
He's back
Second.
in the garage. Oh, there he is.
Second.
Oh, good.
Sorry, I was on mute. I was yelling second to my whole office. Thank you,
Okay.
thanks, and thanks everybody. Thanks, Lonnie.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks again to the auditors. This has been great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
All have a good week.
Bye, everybody.
Everybody.
Take care. Have a good day.